In this module, we'll take a look at the process for integrating SaaS applications with Azure AD. Now, the general premise here is you have many software as a service applications out there in the world from hundreds of different companies. These represent everything from banking applications to social media, to storage, to utilities, to administration tools, to complete platform suites like Office 365. All these applications need a way to authenticate users. And if you had to remember a username and password for everything you would ever want to use, it becomes a massive security problem because how do you manage all that? And more importantly, what if your company wants to purchase these services and grant you access to those services as an employee? How do they govern if you have access to those services? Is your password on that service meeting the requirements of the organization? For example, if you require two-factor, does using that service require two-factor? Azure Active Directory is the glue that begins to bind all this together. What SaaS integration allows is it allows supported applications to use Azure Active Directory as their source of username and password and authentication for users that want to access the application. Let's look at a particular example, which is Office 365. I can create an instance of Azure Active Directory. I can configure it to synchronize with my on-premise Active Directory domain, and then establish password policies around self-service reset, around multi-factor authentication, create dynamic groups, and configure my authentication system the way that I want it and the way that I'm comfortable. I can now simply tell Office 365, don't maintain your own user database, accept users from Azure Active Directory. I can do the same thing with other services, for example, from other companies. They list some examples here. Companies such as SAP, such as Intuit, such as Facebook, such as Citrix GoToMeeting. Any of these applications support authentication themselves, or they can be federated with Azure Active Directory as a service and accept user accounts from Azure Active Directory. Now, the supplemental power that you have is that now you can publish all these applications in a portal, myapps.microsoft.com or portal.office.com/myapps. And it allows you to access those applications. If you're already authenticated, you don't even get prompted for authentication. It's a single sign-on experience. So it's an exceptionally good way to take all these different software as a service applications and make them a seamless integration for your existing users. This is done through the application gallery in Azure Active Directory. So within Azure Active Directory, it's a simple process in the UI to identify applications that are available and then add them to your instance of Azure Active Directory. Now, what's going to vary is the supplemental process. For example, if you're going to add Box.com, you need an enterprise account on Box.com. You'll need to log on and complete the other end of the configuration. It's not quite a point and click process, but it is very simple and very straightforward. Each application provider will have its own supplemental process to complete it, but once it's done, when you access that application, you can now use your Azure Active Directory credentials to log on to whatever that application is. Once that's completed, you can implement conditional access for these applications. Now, here's where the power of Azure Active Directory kind of really takes root. Not only have I configured authentication, but I can now use roles and groups to control which users have access to which applications to help me adhere to license restrictions. For example, maybe I only purchase one application for my sales department because they're the only ones that need it. I can create a group within Azure Active Directory and then only grant the users that are in that sales group access to that particular application. Maybe it's a license restriction, maybe there's a training requirement, maybe there's a security requirement. Additionally, as you can see from the screenshot, you could put supplemental authentication requirements. Maybe a particular application has sensitive data and you want to require multi-factor for one, but not require it for another. Facebook for work, maybe you don't require multi-factor. Dropbox for sharing contracts with customers, maybe you do require multi-factor authentication. So with that in place, you can now expand Azure Active Directory into the universe of third-party software as a service applications that are available today. So that's our look at software as a service for Azure Active Directory.